Kevin Perry and Johnny Sig are back, and big time boxing is back in Vegas this weekend when Canelo takes on Plant for the unified, undisputed IBF, WBO, WBC, WBA World Middleweight, Super Middleweight Championship of the World. Kevin, let's hit it. Hey, Kev, how we doing today, my man?
Better now.
Technology.
Yeah.
Oh, man, if you listeners could only know what we go through sometimes putting these things together. But I tell you what, speaking of technology and all that kind of good stuff, I know you've been sent to hell recently on fight night, against Isaac Cross. We'll talk about that later. But who do you think gets sent to hell in this major fight with Canelo versus Plant? Great fight.
I'm trying to figure out if I could see a scenario where Plant wins the fight. I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna be able to outbox him. Maybe he's got to do something that's a little bit out of his character, something that Canelo's not expecting. Maybe try to come forward and push Canelo back. Maybe that's the strategy to beat Canelo, because I think for the most part, he's just, his last few fights, he's just been the bully. And I think in this fight, he's going to come in there probably with the mentality of the bully. And I think if you can make Canelo go backwards, kind of like how Triple G did the first fight, but I think that was more tactical on Canelo's part because of Triple G's reputation. He didn't want to just stand in front of Golovkin the whole time, but I think by doing that, he wasn't getting Triple G's respect as much. And I think in the second fight, just those whole attitude of how he approached the fight, I thought what won him the fight in the minds of the judges. And I think Caleb Plant probably needs to do that also, but maybe mix it up a little bit, the boxing in there, and then maybe do a little bit of the Andre Ward stuff where, you come forward and then you push him back and you grapple him and you kind of frustrate him. I think that's even like the old Bernard Hopkins kind of style. Just kind of mix up your attack and don't be so predictable. And I think that's his best opportunity for winning. And then obviously stay out of harm's way. Don't be getting hit by clean shots, a lot. Just, be as defensively responsible as possible.
Let's unpack the opposition here. The opponents involved is that we got Canelo at 56-1 with 2 draws, 38 KOs, 64% knockout percentage. That's pretty impressive. His best wins, Kovalov, Jacobs, Triple G, Cotto, Mosley. Stands at 5'8", went through multiple weight classes. I believe a 4-time, divisional champion. His experience is tremendous. And you are absolutely correct about Canelo, is that, he's been very aggressive of late. He's been a stalker, a great body puncher. He goes after you. And I love the fact that he's like speaking English now and just cursing all the time. We'll talk about that more later. But for Caleb Plant, okay, he's obviously the taller opponent, has a knockout percentage rate of 57%. Not bad. 21-0, 12 KOs, age 29. His best wins are Wuskati and Truax.
And Kevin Perry.
Kevin Perry. The thing about Caleb Plant, he started at 160. If we look at Canelo on the flip side, obviously started at around 140, 147 went to, and then now he is where he's at. And the thing about Caleb Plant is he's got a wonderful story. He's fighting on a lot of passion. Like, he made like a promise to his unfortunately deceased daughter that he would become a world champion, in which he has. That's why we have a unification bout right now. This guy's got a lot of passion. The intangibles, okay, the things that I see here is that Canelo's experience, though, however, passion is great, but experience, pays off great dividends. So what do you think about that, Kev? Like, How do you see the experience playing a factor, or is this Plant just that hungry?
Wow, that's a lot to unpack there. Is Plant hungry? Yeah, I mean he's not going to be hungry after this fight because he's going to make his biggest payday. But I don't know. I mean, there's so much information he gave me right there, and I think for the most part, it's. I don't think it's even going to come down to hunger or whatnot, because it's one thing to be hungry. The bottom line is whatever fighter can execute their game plan the best will probably win the fight. But at the same time, I think I don't even think Canelo necessarily needs to execute his game plan to win, because I think he has more wrinkles in his game. So if he goes in there with a certain game plan that he has and it's not working, I think he's the one who can make more adjustments. I think from Caleb Plant's standpoint, whatever game plan he goes in there with, more than likely he's got to execute that game plan like pretty much to a T to win the fight. Because he's a guy with less experience. So I don't see him kind of going in there with a plan A and it not working and then switching into plan B and C. He's just Canelo's obviously has almost 3 times as many fights, and he's fought in multiple weight classes against world-class opposition. I believe he's fought or beaten 15 former world champions. I don't think Canelo or Caleb Plant's even fought one world champion, except for Caleb Truax, who was definitely way past his prime. So all the margin of error, or basically Plant has no margin for error, and Canelo can make some errors and still pull off a victory. So that's kind of how I look at the fight for the most part. Did I answer your question, or was I?
Yes, you did. Excellent
going
points.
Somewhere else. I'm not sure.
No, excellent points. 100% excellent points is that I think this fight is based on experience. You broke that down brilliantly. And for Plant though, here's what's up. Against Canelo has a hard time against pure boxers. Caleb Plant, he's definitely a pure boxer. And what happens with Caleb is that, he puts a complication in front of Canelo, like an Israel Lara did, a Mayweather does. And I'm not saying that, Plant is on that level, but he is definitely a boxer, and he's got a great jab. He goes out there, blue collar, brings his lunch pail to work type of guy, went through a lot of adversity in his life, but sticks to a game plan. And Canelo in the past has had a hard time with that. But now we look at this, is that does Canelo give him the opportunity in Plant to do that? Because we've seen Canelo, and you mentioned it again brilliantly, about how aggressive Canelo is nowadays. Like, he is in that ass, bro. Like, he doesn't mess around.
But I think also part of that is, since he's moved up in weight, he's been like kind of the shorter guy. But I mean, he's always kind of been, I guess you could say, a pressure counter puncher, if that makes any sense. But when you're the shorter man, I mean, you kind of do have to come forward. I mean, it's kind of hard to box from the outside if you have a height and reach disadvantage. Most of these 168 pounders are just naturally bigger guys. So as far as, the dimensions anyways, Canelo's pretty stout. He's pretty strong. So I wouldn't want to say they're bigger or stronger, but they're definitely, their dimensions are, they're longer as far as their reach and their height. So Canelo has to fight a little bit more in the pocket, and these guys need to kind of stay on the outside, which traditionally is the way that people look at boxing. If you're tall, you're supposed to fight tall, and if you're small, you're supposed to fight small. But I think in this instance, it's almost like when you just don't want to make the guy think that you're giving him too much respect. And I think from the standpoint of Caleb Plant, I think in the first 3 rounds, he really has to get Canelo's respect, as far as not necessarily punching power, but that he's the bigger man, that he's not afraid of whatever Canelo's going to dish out at him. and make Canelo work for the stuff that he gets. Not just give him, shots, not let Canelo kind of dictate the pace that the fight is being fought at. And I think maybe for Plant to try to set a faster pace. I know he hasn't been 12 rounds a whole lot, so that might be an issue for him to know how to set the pace against somebody with more experience. But excuse me, but that's something that definitely they're gonna have to, that hopefully they worked on in the gym.
That's what I think this fight comes down to is experience, And I looked at the last several fights of Canelo and, my research and stuff like that in my mind's memory as well. And the thing about Canelo, like when he understands that he's got you a certain way and he starts like having fun, he doesn't play with his food. He eats it and he goes right after you and tries to eat you up. Body shots and this confidence, this level of confidence. And I've noticed like little, like, things with fighters that are actually big things, like his eyes. His eyes are focused on what he wants to do. You can almost see it like it's like a flip of a switch, and he goes right after you and he'll press you and he'll challenge you and he'll make you ask yourself questions about why you're here. And I think that for Plant, that's going to be an issue. Now, I happen to like Plant a whole lot. His story, unfortunately, with his daughter passing and stuff like that, he's got a lot of passion. He's got a lot of reasons as to why they call it the why factor, why you want to do it, and I believe he made a promise to his daughter that, he would
I'm
win.
sorry, just to interject there. When you say why, reasons why he has a shot to win, or reasons why he's gotten this far?
Why he's doing it. Like, I really believe that it's a factor of his emotion and his passion for certain things that he started. Like why he did it, probably loved boxing, and why he's doing it now. He's got an extra level of things, that he wants to put on performance on Saturday night at T-Mobile in Las Vegas. I think that a lot of it has to do with a lot of emotion and passion, and it might take him to the next level. I mean, he did promise his daughter he'd win a world title, and he did. And he still fights on in her honor. So that's a committed dude. Like, think about back in the day. Remember Buster Douglas when he fought Mike Tyson? Wanted to do it for his mama. And guess what? He did it, and that's some. He did it and went all in on probably the biggest upset in boxing, or if not sports history, in Tokyo.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
I guess
anything's possible.
There's just something I want to interject. I think to me probably the biggest factor in the fight, or the thing that I don't know if it intrigues me the most, but I think it's a huge factor, is I'm just curious how well Caleb Plant is going to be able to take Canelo's punches. I think if he's able to take Canelo's punches pretty well, I think that gives him a good chance of winning the fight, just because it's just going to be hard for him to execute his game plan if he's getting hit, and he's kind of, because he's a slick fighter. So he's somebody that, you never see him get hit a whole lot. So that's like an X factor, something that you don't know about, as far as his character.
For Plant, he's got to make Canelo miss and pay. That's what he's got to do. He's got to stay strong with counter punching. For Canelo, I mean, we all know he's a great power puncher. Like I mentioned before, 64% KO percentage. That's high. That's really high. At any weight category, that's really high. So, for Plant, he needs to stay away and get away and evade shots. That's obvious in boxing, but he needs to counter. If he does get away, he can't be afraid. He has to engage in fire, baptism under fire. What he needs to do is that if he makes Canelo miss, he has to make Canelo pay. And then what that does, it offsets Canelo in trying to get his rhythm back and confidence back. Because if you make someone miss a lot, like look what Mayweather did to Canelo, okay? Yeah. It made Canelo constantly have to, reset, hit the reset button, reboot, and then try to get his confidence back. And then Mayweather made him pay a lot in that fight. And so Caleb Plant's got to like look at that fight very, very intelligently and deeply. And I think that's what he needs to do. At the end of the day, man, let's do predictions. I said I wouldn't do it, but I'm on a roll lately. I was messing up, but now I've had them right lately. Kev, who wins?
I got Canelo. I got Canelo by decision. I think it's gonna go 12 rounds. I think I see Plant making a decent account of himself the first few rounds, and I think defensively, he's got enough. He's got enough defensive savvy and enough size to make it 12. But I see maybe 8 rounds to 4. I think that's somewhere around there. I think a lot of people are overestimating Canelo's punching power, and they're picking Canelo by knockout. But I think it's going to go 12 rounds.
You know what? I have to agree. I'm not just agreeing to agree, but I have to agree. I have it the same way. I think it goes 12 rounds.
Damn, you agreed with me.
Man. I have to do it.
I'm in trouble now.
That's the safe. Yeah, you know what? Anyone listening, go against it, especially if you were listening a month ago. Man, I was all sorts of wrong.
I was trying to figure out a prediction that would go somewhere different than where you were going, but
I'll give you a different look on it. My perspective is I think
Canelo... So we both got Canelo by 12-round unanimous decision. We're gonna move on because I mean there's only so much you could talk about this fight, Canelo and Caleb Plant. But we're gonna go with the weekend review because there was some good fights this past weekend. We had a top rank card on ESPN Plus, and we also had a great Showtime card on Saturday as well. Competing cards, like how they love to do in boxing. Which one do you want to talk about first? Which one was? They're both were good cards. So
Jaron Ellis.
All right, Jaron Boots Ennis, welterweight, 147-pound prospect, TKO won over Thomas Delorme, tough Puerto Rican veteran. Has a few losses on his record, been stopped a couple times before then, but first, I mean, 2 knockdowns. The second knockdown, Delorme tried to get up, but I mean, he was pretty much he was toast. What do you think of this guy, Ennis? Is Ennis the real deal, or does he need to be tested more? Is he gonna have to fight a top dog before he even gets tested? What do you think, John?
I think Ennis is the real deal. 28-0, 26 KOs. Looked fantastic, strong, in a very strong weight category, too, at 147. A lot of guys are probably going to duck and dodge this man, not in the ring, but outside of the ring.
He's like a bigger version of because I mean I can see this guy at middleweight in the next couple of years. He's like a middleweight version of Terrence Crawford. He can fight left-handed, he can fight right-handed. He's fast, he's quick. He's a better athlete than Terrence Crawford, to be honest with you, from what I'm seeing. Hasn't quite fought great opposition, but he's kind of making the opposition just look ordinary. So I mean, you kind of have to take that into account. Sergey Lipinets had never been stopped. He put that guy to sleep. Similar outcome here. A tough, solid veteran like Delorme, who usually could go rounds with most fighters. He went, I believe, 10 rounds with WBA welterweight champion Yordenis Ugas a few years back. He went, I think, 12 rounds with Jamal James, who was on the main event for this card a few fights back. So Delorme normally is pretty durable. He's been stopped twice, once by Terrence Crawford, and then another time by some Argentine fighter. So he's not somebody that just gets blown out every time out. I mean, he's a solid pro. Great win for Ennis. The main event was a pretty good main event. Jamal James against, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the guy's name, Butev. Tough Russian guy, just landing
Right.
body shots. A lot of low blows too. But stopped Jamal James, who I believe had never been stopped. So that was for the WBA regular welterweight title. We know the real champion at welterweight for the WBA is Yordenis Ugas, who just beat Manny Pacquiao. So and then ESPN Plus had another first round blowout in the main event, which was Jose Cepeda, who was in the fight of the year. Was it last year? Was he fight of the year?
I believe it was last year. Yeah, and I tell you
Against
what, there
Ivan
was
Baranchyk, that 5 or 10 knockdown, 6-round fight they had. He knocked out undefeated prospect. What was the prospect? Josu Vargas, I believe it was his name. And
there was a lot of first round knockouts.
I mean, that was just a brutal knockout. The first knockdown, the Puerto Rican fighter got up, and then the follow-up barrage was just, I mean, it reminded me of Ray Mercer and Tommy Morrison. I mean, it was one of those where there was about 3 or 4 unanswered punches, and it was almost like when he was getting hit, the punches were actually holding him up from getting knocked to the ground, and he was in a corner. I mean, it was vicious. Great win for Jose Cepeda. Definitely a solid contender at 140 pounds. Definitely deserves another title shot. I just heard in the rumor mill that they're trying to put together a rematch with him and Jose Ramirez. Interesting fight. And actually, they fought. They fought a few years back, and Ramirez won the decision. I definitely thought Cepeda pulled out, the close victory, but they gave it to the A-side fighter. What was your thoughts of the ESPN card? Did you get a chance to check it out?
Yes, I did. Honorable mention, Nico Ali Walsh. Now,
he was on the card too.
Yeah, he's now 2-0. Got a TKO round 3, and he's campaigning at 160 pounds. I happen to know Nico on a personal level, and I've actually seen him fight amateur, and the kid is growing. He's growing really, really strong, and he's got a lot of ambition and passion. It was a great KO.
And I'm sorry to cut you off. Is he local? Is he
he lives in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah, lives in Vegas. Yep. Lives in Las Vegas, and great kid.
Can we get him on the show, John, at some point?
I would love to. Absolutely.
That sounds definitely need to start interviewing some local guys. Even not to kind of go into another tangent. Local fighter, Raleigh Romero. We'll talk about him later, but continue, John.
Yeah, Ali looks great, man. I mean, Walsh, he looks awesome, and I gotta say, like, I've seen him develop. I saw him fight amateur about 4 years ago. I have a friend that is friends with him. How I got in contact with him, and a great friend of mine brought me out to a couple amateur fights for Nico, and I've seen him develop, and he's really starting to come into it. They call it the man strength. That's the thing that they say nowadays.
And how old is he, John? And how many amateur fights did he have?
He's 21 years old. The amount of amateur fights, I'm not really sure, but he's starting to learn the professional level extremely well. Now, again, he's only 2-0, but he's knocked 2 guys out and very early. The first one at professional ranks was 1 round, I believe, and then this one was in the 3rd round. So it's pretty impressive. A good start, We also saw young Holyfield lately. Like, he was someone.
Oh, Holyfield looked great the other day.
Yo.
He struggled a little bit that first round, but that knockout, wow.
Oh, wow. My God. Like, when I saw that, I was like, oh, man, that's in the genes, bro.
And I don't want to be critical because, and you know what, a lot of people, they try to, when these guys are coming up, they're, they got the big name behind them, like Holyfield or Ali, and these opponents were not bad opponents. I mean, these were pretty. I mean, let's be
Some
honest
of them
here.
unbeaten. Some of them unbeaten.
These guys are prospects, so I mean, they're not going to be fighting killers right away. But as far as the opposition that you expect them to be fighting at this level, I think they're fighting, the right level of opponents to get the proper experience. I mean, these aren't guys that they're just blowing over because they're terrible fighters. I think, these guys look like they're pretty well schooled. I mean, that knockout that Holyfield landed was that was Sports Center highlight written all over it.
Oh man, it was amazing. And it's a great point you're making too, because look back in the day, we didn't see people come out of the crib, meaning like we didn't see their first 10, 12, 15 fights until they started getting a name for themselves on television. Now we see people in pro debuts like on major cards on ESPN Plus, DAZN. So we're watching everyone develop. Like Shakur Stevenson is another great example.
And it is a lot of pressure. Sometimes when fighters are coming up and they're fighting off of TV, it can be good for their development because they don't have the pressure. They don't got to worry about all this stuff, selling a ton of tickets or whatnot. They just kind of can build themselves up in obscurity, and then once they get to the level where they feel a little bit more comfortable, then they can kind of start being televised and whatnot. So but for these guys, it's got to be difficult, just with the name attachment, Holyfield or Ali. I mean, that's just a lot of attention you're going to get, regardless of the ability you have. But these guys seem like, for the level they're at, they have a future, but it just remains to be seen if they're going to be world championship level or not. But with these guys that have probably limited amateur careers, you just kind of have to move them up in kind of, I wouldn't say baby steps, but a little bit more care needs to be involved, from a promoter or manager standpoint.
Let's talk about your boxing career. Fight Night champion on Xbox. Okay. From what I heard, you got sent to hell by Isaac Cross. And so this is now.
Well, I got knocked out about probably 15, 20 times in a row.
Jesus, you keep getting up though.
No, I never get up. I just hit reset.
Oh no. I got a funny story for you. I was playing that game online, messing around, talking shit, and you got to understand, a lot of like people play this stuff regularly. Like me and Kevin, like we're blue collar guys. We have jobs, we have families, all that kind of stuff. So you jump on when you can. And I was feeling really confident on the leaderboards. Like I was starting to move up in the ranks. My guy was called Johnny Sig and campaigning at middleweight. And so what happened was I finally got to challenge the number one guy after like dogging him, emailing him, trying to challenge him. And he wouldn't mess around with me. And then, so finally one night, real late, 2 a.m., it's just like me and him online. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get him. So I go in there. I talk so much shit to him on our headsets because I'm like a total nerd with this stuff. So I got like a headset on, microphone set up, all this type of shit. I'm like, I'm going to beat your ass. Your mom sucks. And I'm talking so much shit. First round, I drop him 3 times. I'm like, yeah, that's what's up, bro. Wow. I got you. You're out, And then my fighter, and he gets up 3 times. If the 3 knockdown rule was in effect, I would have technically won this fight. I'm still pissed off. So homeboy gets up. We go to round 2. My fighter is exhausted because I threw 2,000 punches in the first round. And my guy was dead. So as soon as we start the fight, in round 2, I throw a weak-ass jab. He just lands this bomb over my head, And mind you, the whole time, he did not answer back in the shit-talking through the headset. He just kept his mouth shut. He kept it honorable, whatever. So I get knocked out in the second round. The next day, I go back to try to play again. And then I get an email 4 pages long from this guy about how much my mom sucks, how much my life sucks, how much of a shitbag I am, and all this type of stuff. I'm like, wow. Dude, it took my soul away from me. So the point of the story is no shit talking, people, because you have to be able to back it up.
Yeah. I just play against a computer. I don't play online, so
Whole nother world.
yeah, I'm playing it safe.
Whole nother world. So I want to talk about this world of does Kevin care? We got some fights coming up,
All right.
man. All right.
Cool. This is my favorite segment.
This is a great one.
All right.
Great segment. Okay. So Demetrius Andrade versus Jason Quigley. How do we feel about this? Coming up November 19th.
Wow. And that's on DAZN?
Yes.
Thumbs down.
Don't like it.
No, not at all. I mean, Andrade, I guess he's getting paid, but they're kind of doing him wrong. You know, I think Gennady Golovkin is going to fight Ryota Murata in December. But Murata's a big draw in Japan. There's probably more money for that fight. But when is this guy going to get his just due? I mean,
I know.
I just, but, you know, if you're making money, you're getting paid, you can feed your family, then, you know, I can understand, you know, at the very least, he is getting he's been a little bit more active. But these opponents don't do a whole lot for his career. So thumbs down on that one. Quigley's a decent fighter, but I don't see him lasting the distance, to be honest with you.
I agree.
Too stationary, too ordinary, no special effects, as Mayweather would say. So, yeah.
Great terminology. Jaime Munguia versus Gabriel Rosado, November 13th. So this one's a little sooner than the aforementioned. But what do you think about this one?
Not a bad not a bad fight from a entertainment standpoint, because Munguia, he makes good fights, and so does Rosado. But as far as the significance, not very significant. Munguia is the WBO #1 contender to Andrade, but both guys are fighting next month against different opponents. So after those two fights, I want to see Munguia step it up and fight Demetrius Andrade. I think that's a great fight. It's a great clash of styles. That's the fight I want to see. The two other fights I could care less about.
Do you see? That's why I'm smiling right now, because that's exactly where I was going with this whole scenario.
All right. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I totally forgot about those fights. So it's great that you brought them up, but they're just it's an eliminator. I mean, that's what it comes down to. We want to see Demetrius Andrade against Jaime Munguia.
Mm-hmm.
That's the fight to make for DAZN.
That's why I brought him up. Now, this one is an obvious one.
Okay.
But now I'm going to ask, does Kevin want to pay? Okay. All right. So we're going to change the segment from does Kevin care? Does Kevin want to pay? We got a pay-per-view, a big one coming up. Crawford versus Porter. I am going to pay for this. This is one hell of a fight. Would you pay for this fight, Kevin?
I would pay if I had like a few people coming over and kind of kicking in beer or a few bucks. I would probably pay for it. I think it's. Do I think it's $80 worthy? No, I think it's probably like a $50 pay-per-view. But to be honest with you, we've been around this sport for, I don't know, 15 probably years or so.
15,
at least.
20 years, yeah.
You longer because you fought in the amateurs, but I've been covering the sport since probably 2005. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm just saying from a media standpoint, I covered since 2005, but I've been watching boxing most of my life. And some of these fights that are on pay-per-view now, I mean, they would have just been like regular HBO or HBO After Dark in the early 2000s. So
don't get me started.
So if you make that comparison, I mean, this is really not pay-per-view, but as far as what else is out there, it's and what the amount of money these guys are demanding, it's pay-per-view. So,
well, you come over my house, I'll pay for it. You bring the beer,
all right,
and that's it. I'm buying this thing.
I
love Sean Porter, and I also love Terrence Crawford. Both guys I admire highly. Like, for different reasons. Terrence Crawford obviously is a very versatile fighter, goes conventional to southpaw, has great angles and looks. Kind of a slow starter, but when he gets it going and gets that confidence going and finds your rhythm and gets his trajectory of shots into play, he becomes a monster. And for Sean Porter, he's the most consistent guy I see in boxing. He fights the same way every time, win or lose. He always brings what he brings.
Well, I mean, at the very least, he comes to fight. I mean,
he comes to fight.
There's no dispute there. You're not going to see Sean Porter go in there, and if he's losing a couple rounds, he starts to get frustrated and just packs it in. He's going to keep coming.
He don't stop.
He will walk through fire to win the fight. I mean, he will definitely make the effort that's necessary. He'll try to make adjustments, whatnot. I don't see him beating Terrence Crawford, but I think he has a chance. I mean, I definitely think he's gonna try to win. I just don't see him pulling off the victory.
Absolutely has a chance. I love the fact that he steamrolls. He fights like a linebacker, fights with a lot of passion and commitment. And he fell short on a lot of his big opportunities, but just a little short, not like majorly short,
Well, I thought he was beaten by Spence pretty decisively. I know it was a split decision, but I thought he lost that fight pretty clearly.
Okay. So, I mean, if you look at that, Spence is also a master, performer and boxer, obviously athlete.
Yeah.
And
I thought he probably beat Keith Thurman. I thought he lost decisively to Kell Brook.
Yes, he did lose decisively.
The fight against Danny Garcia, I thought he won that fight. I thought that was a clear 8-4, 7-5 type of fight. So he hasn't been in any fights where he's gotten blown out, but he's been competitive in every fight that he's been in.
That's my point. So. He's always competitive, and it's like you see certain fighters, they make excuses, like they say like, well, my night, I was a little off tonight or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and I think I don't want to go into this fight too much now because I think we're going to talk about it again later down the road. But
of course,
I just want to add one thing. My assessment, intangible, I guess you could say. I think Sean Porter is going to be surprised at the physical strength of Terrence Crawford. Just let me leave it at that.
Great point. A lot of great points. Okay, so we unpacked Canelo versus Plant coming from Las Vegas on Showtime pay-per-view, and I'm not getting paid to say that, even though I did say it well. Again, for the IBF, WBO, WBC, WBA, Unified.
So does Kevin pay is what you're asking me?
Does Kevin pay?
You going to be buying this pay-per-view?
You want to come over on Saturday? Yes.
Okay. All right.
I'm getting it.
Okay. Do I think it's worth it? Well, the undercard is horrendous. So that's one
horrible
thing that we didn't talk about, but I don't even want to go into it. It's pathetic.
There's no point to talk about it.
Is it worth? And what's the price tag? Probably $90. I don't know. Oh, actually, well, just to kind of change the subject a little bit. The ticket prices for the arena, $800 to sit in nosebleed seats. I mean, it's just,
where are these people getting money from? Wasn't everyone out of work for like 2 years? That's another topic for another day.
I think some people they save up their money, and so maybe they don't go anywhere all year, and they save up $1,600, and that's the only night they go out all year.
And so we have a load watch here. They shoot their load. There's like, here it is, and they start burning money. I mean, maybe they're working again. Good for them, And
so if you spend $800 on tickets for a Canelo fight, does that include free beer, or do you still got to buy? You still got to buy the beers?
You get nothing. You get nothing.
Yeah, I just went to T-Mobile Arena. Well, actually, this is at MGM Grand, so it's a different arena, but Canelo's, I think, last fight was at T-Mobile Arena.
I thought it was T-Mobile, but
I was just there for a hockey game, and those beers aren't all that cheap. I mean, $16 for a beer,
$16. I was gonna say, like, you know,
and they don't and it's card only.
Exactly, which really sucks. But it's like, you know, I'm a cash money type guy, so it's like I go up to the counter, be like, yeah, I'll take a Miller Lite draft, please. They're like $16. I'm like, I only meant one. They're like, yeah, $16. I'm like, you all suck. And $800, like, we bitch about like pay-per-views being like $100 and sometimes you don't get your money's worth. Imagine you spend $800 or travel to come to Vegas for a particular fight and that fight sucks.
I guess it just well, that was like Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather when people were asking for their money back. You know, you remember that whole fiasco.
Oh, of course. That's the point I was kind of alluding towards. Or if a fight gets canceled, imagine like you travel all the way across the pond or wherever you come from, put up a room, go out in Vegas, gamble, most likely lose money. And then next thing you know, like, fight's canceled. Wow.
Yeah, so just to sum that up, pay-per-view, would I pay for the pay-per-view? I'll let you pay.
Again, bring the beer.
And the tickets? No way.
No.
Well, you know, me and you are we're kind of spoiled because we've covered boxing for years. I mean, I've covered, I don't know how many fights. I think maybe the next show we'll do a segment where we can kind of talk about some of the best fights that we've covered as you know, boxing writers, journalists, because there's been many. I have a bunch of the back here. Let me grab one just real quick.
Yeah, for me, I already know I have like at least 5 to 10 that come to mind, and I probably did about 20 events. And I got to go back to my Jersey roots with that because Arturo Gatti, I had the honor and privilege to cover a lot of his fights, and they were always special and they were always big events. Arturo Gatti, rest in peace.
Well, they're not quite coming off, but one I just saw on there was Andre Ward against Arthur Abraham. Wasn't the greatest fight in the world, but I was ringside, so that was kind of cool.
It's amazing when you're ringside.
Yeah.
Like, and I was ringside for Andre Ward versus Carl Froch.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, dude, let me tell you something real quick. You know, and this is kind of like a setup for maybe a future show that me and Kevin do randomly about covering fights ringside. Is that I went out there for ring talk via Pedro Fernandez, the great Pedro. And so I get virtually like front row press.
Okay.
And this is amazing. And I actually had a photographer with me, right? And they took still shots of what Andre Ward did to Carl Froch that night. And if you see these pictures, Kev, I can actually share these with you. I still have them.
Yeah.
The form of Andre Ward, like the jab at that time, and everything was like literally picture perfect. Is that? And I told Pedro, he's like, he looked great, huh? You know, after the fight, when I was pressing the article and whatnot. And then I did radio the next day, and I was like, Pete, I'm like, he is nasty good in there, man. Like, Carl Froch had nothing for him, nothing. That jab was like probably one of the most ridiculous things. Andre Ward, great fighter. That stands out to me. It's not an amazing fight, but as far as the performance goes, that it's funny you mentioned him. He when you see him live, it's different than on TV, people. It's very different. You see a whole lot of stuff there, and the confidence level.
He pretty much neutralized everything that Arthur Abraham, I remember, was trying to do.
That's what he did to Carl Froch. Yeah. Carl Froch couldn't do anything.
That's his greatest asset, is neutralizing his opponent's weapons and just kind of turning him into basic, ordinary fighters.
They make them like
as good as those fighters are.
Yes, sir.
And anything else you wanted to?
That's it. I mean, I hope everyone enjoys the fight. Let us
actually
know
this right here, John. I don't know if you could see there. This was
nice. I got it.
This was Kevin Perry at NASCAR.
Oh shit! You went to
yeah.
NASCAR. That's I
covered NASCAR last year, right before the pandemic, and that was a great event. I was doing some video stuff over there, some stuff for a radio station out here. So that was pretty cool.
I always wanted to go to one of those events, man, but hopefully at some point soon. And I want everyone to enjoy this event this weekend coming up. Once again, Canelo versus Plant, for the undisputed. Okay, This is a big deal. This is a very fucking big deal. I got to use the F-bomb. Unification at 168 pounds. Kevin, this was great, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, it was a really good show. We had probably a 3-week hiatus. The last show we did was Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder review. And glad to be back. Gotta definitely do a post-fight show. We'll try to do that.
Immediate reaction.
Yeah. Hopefully Saturday night. So
and me and Kevin will be buzzed, and it will be even better than ever.
Oh yeah.
So Saturday night, Kevin's coming over to my house. We're gonna watch the fight, get nice, and lit for everyone, and give you our thoughts.
Yep, good times as always. Cheers.